In this video, we're going to break down one of the more intriguing wide receivers in the 2022 NFL Draft. He played for Alabama this past season, and no, it's not Jameson Williams, it's John Metchie. And I want to talk to you about what role I envision for him in the NFL, some of the pros and cons of drafting him, and overall, just give a brief overview of his player profile, a little bit of an elevator pitch for John Metchie, if you will. First off, let's start with this height and weight measurements. He's about 5'11", 187 pounds, with nearly 31-inch arms. So nothing tremendous on either of those things. None of those things rank above the 30th percentile for wide receivers according to mockdraftable.com. But where do I view John Metchie in this draft class? Well, he's my 68th overall prospect. So we're talking about maybe a third-round pick. I could definitely see him going in the second round. I think my updated big board, which will come out probably in the next 2 weeks or so, he's going to be in a second-round selection. He's going to be locked into that area. And he's partially hurt because, like I said, I haven't talked about yet, but the torn ACL he suffered this past season is going to drop his stock a little bit because we didn't get to see him through the pre-draft process. But certainly I believe there will be teams out there that will view him as worth a second-round pick for some reasons that we'll discuss in a moment. But as I mentioned, 68th overall on my big board, and he's wide receiver 11, just one spot behind Jalen Tolbert, who I talked about in a previous video that you can find on this channel. Now, as I mentioned, Metchie suffered a torn ACL in the SEC championship game, but he should return in time for the preseason considering the timing of the injury. Whereas with Jameson Williams, we don't really know when he'll return from his injury, but we know Metchie should be back in time for the majority of the significant parts of the offseason. While Williams largely overshadowed Metchie for the first half of Alabama's season, Metchie saw a stock plummet a little bit because of that, but he overcame it and had some dominant performances down the stretch against Auburn, Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. In that Auburn game, by the way, Williams was out of the game because of a targeting call on special teams. So Metchie was playing, for the most part, as the star receiver and by himself, as the receiver room really doesn't have much to it besides those two guys. I know Slade Bolden's was there, but Slade Bolden is not on that level. And Metchie had 6 receptions for 97 yards and had a touchdown against Georgia before tearing his ACL. Now, Metchie lacks the desirable size for an outside wide receiver, as I mentioned, about 5'11", 187 pounds, under 31-inch arms. He played roughly 29% of his college snaps in the slot, but I think that's where he'll play most of his snaps in the NFL. I'm not opposed to playing him outside. I just don't think every team's going to take that route. And I think there's going to be some inside-outside versatility to him. I'm just pulling a name that I had here because I know I was looking at him recently. Something like a Russell Gage, different playing styles entirely. But Russell Gage is a guy who can play inside and out and almost split 50-50 in a sense. I think Metchie could be that, but I think there are a lot of teams who will view him as a slot only because of his measurements. And his skill set, I think, would work really well in the slot, frankly. Drops were an issue at Alabama for Metchie. He had 15 drops on 212 career targets, including 8 drops this past season. This is largely because he tries too many body catches instead of extending with his already limited catch rates to try to reach out and hands catch it or catch away from his body. So there's some concerns with that. And again, too many body catches is just an easy way to drop the football. Metchie doesn't have big hands either, which is a little bit of concern. 9 1/4-inch hands, that's the 39th percentile for wide receivers, which might be why he tries so many body catches. That's certainly a little bit of a concern there. And Metchie also lacks elite speed and explosiveness, but makes up for it with his shortcomings with other areas where he's dominant, I would say. One of the better receivers in this class in certain areas that we'll talk about here in just a second. He thrives as a route runner, capable of creating natural separation with his cuts, footwork, and wily misdirection. And he basically goes into routes quick and comes out of routes quick. He's a guy who will not have to slow down to make any kind of cuts. And like I said, it creates natural separation. It doesn't have extreme speed, but has good enough speed where he can separate from cornerbacks, from defensive backs. And his route running is so crisp that he's just going to lose them at some point along the way. And he does a pretty good job with head fakes, with arm fakes, with hip fakes, a little bit of trying to direct guys in different directions and basically send the DBs shooting off to one side when he ends up breaking out the other way. So he does a good job of selling his routes. And overall, that whole package put together creates a lot of extra room for quarterbacks. And he has shown some short area twitch and enough quickness to press defenders on deeper routes, so he can win over the top. It's not something he does frequently, I would say, but he can definitely win over the top. And this twitch and his short area quickness helps create yak routes after the catch. Metchie has an excellent release package as well that complements his professional profile. When I say professional profile, I mean kind of what we come to associate with these Alabama receivers, guys who can get clean releases, guys who run routes correctly, guys who just are able to create natural separation through their ability and their footwork. And that's something Metchie does, and he fits that mold. Again, the athletic profile is not fantastic, but overall, a guy I think could be a second-round pick, as I mentioned. I have him right now as a guy who I know will be a third-round pick for sure, but I think he could be a second-rounder. And he should thrive on short to intermediate routes and develop it into a solid deep threat in the NFL. So again, a guy who potentially will have inside-outside versatility, who I think will be better off in the slot, but could play outside. Someone who can win at the very least at the short and intermediate routes and occasionally can win deep. And while he doesn't have elite speed, he's got good enough speed, and he's got some twitch. And again, the footwork, the route running, the natural separation, the misdirection with the hands, the hips, the head, all of that profiles into a really solid wide receiver that I believe has one of the higher floors of all wide receivers in the 2022 NFL draft.